Hello, 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 and welcome to the Seasoned Woman. I'm so excited. I say this every episode, y'all, but really and truly, really deeply excited about this special guest today because our guest of honor is actually someone that actually doesn't live in Lagos. She lives all the way in Accra. But she was, I actually don't want to say where she was born and raised. But regardless, she's here visiting, and she gracefully agreed to be on the episode this afternoon. And I'm just extremely happy about this episode and what we have in store for everyone, and what you really are going to be sharing about yourself and about your life and about your journey. I always love to start with a formal bio and then add my own little, introduction. But Serenity Smith is an international educator, coach, speaker, and consultant specializing in special education. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and International Relations and African American Studies from Buffalo State University, in addition to a Master's of Science in Education in Students with Disabilities from Long Island University, Brooklyn campus. She's had a successful career teaching in both public and private education in Brooklyn, New York, Atlanta, Georgia, the Netherlands, and currently in Accra, Ghana. Serenity is known for her work in policy research and development, civic participation, and special education. She has taught Common Core New York Standards, the International Baccalaureate Middle Years Program, and the Aero Standards-based curriculum for middle and high school students. She's the current Special Education Needs Coordinator at Ghana International School, and she's responsible for leading and coordinating the provision of special educational needs support for students with special educational needs from Form 1 to Upper 6 within the Cambridge International Curriculum. In addition to that, Serenity is an avid traveler. She's been to 30 countries, including Lagos.
As the 30th country.
And I know Serenity really through an opportunity for my nonprofit, Africa's Mental Health Matters, to partner with George Washington University last year. And we did a forum for people in the mental health space to come together. And we also did a forum for young students at the University of Ghana. And Serenity was present for both forums, but she actually got to speak and be a special speaker for the event that we did in Accra. And I think instantly I was really connected to Serenity. But more importantly, I think God just works in mysterious ways, because I, was trying to get people involved and get them to sign up for the forum that we were having. And so I sent it to like a bunch of groups that I would belong to in Ghana. And she just so happened to respond, and she was just like, "Hey, do you guys have a speaker?" And I was like, no, we actually are looking for one. And she was able to reach out to our colleagues at George Washington University, and just like that became a speaker. And so the journey, and it could have ended there, but the relationship continued to kind of develop and brew even after her speaking engagement. And I truly am just, I know I say this a lot, but truly just inspired by Serenity and her story. And so it was just an honor and great privilege to be able to have her both in Lagos and also have her on the podcast this evening. So
yes,
welcome, without further ado, Serenity Smith. Okay, girl.
New York City in the building.
Okay. Give us the Brooklyn accent. Come on. Give it to us.
Yeah. But I'm so thankful. I'm truly happy to be here. It's an honor to not just be here, but to be in another country on the continent, the motherland, and to have this moment to talk about my story with you is really a privilege, because it's a near and dear story as well.
Yeah, no, thank you for trusting me. Thank you for being willing to share. And I think there's like freedom I mean, what really, I think the seasoned woman really shows that there's so many different women in different seasons, but there's a freedom in being able to share that, right? With vulnerability and openness. And the fact that you think that this is a safe space to be able to do that is just honestly God. You know, I really am grateful. But yeah, so I know people are like, what's Serenity's story? You know, like she's in Mark Cross, she's a teacher, she's from Brooklyn. I mean, she has
Queens.
Okay. Queens. Or, you know, you New York people don't play about
the boroughs,
where you're all from. She's from Queens. Like, what is her story? So I just want to kind of start like from the onset of things. Serenity, you have a beautiful, beautiful name.
Thank you.
And one of the things that stood out to me about our first encounter, our second encounter, I should say, when you were sharing your story, was the fact that you explained to us the significance of your name and how your name came about. So let's talk a little bit about, you know, your name, how it came about, your parents, and a little bit about your upbringing, and then kind of go from there.
Yeah, so my name is Serenity Joy Smith. Okay. And so it's very beautiful and peaceful. I think over the years, I've just been so used to the name, but the meaning for it is that my mother and father met in what we will call Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholic Anonymous meetings. So those are people who attend 12-step programs on their road to sobriety and trying to become clean from a life of drug usage and alcoholism. And both my parents met in the NAAA meetings. And so I'm what's called a recovery baby. So that means my mother has 30 years clean and I'm 30 years old. Wow. And so in the NAAA meetings, they have what's called the Serenity prayer. And my mother initially wanted to name me Joy, but she decided to name me after the Serenity prayer, also because it was said as a baby, I really didn't cry, or I wasn't much of a crying baby. Yeah. And so it's just like, oh, Serenity. And, you know, it was meaningful for my mother. It was her journey towards becoming clean. My dad had a few years above my mom in his sobriety walk, but that's how they met. And so, yeah, my name was Serenity Joy Smith. And I think as I gotten older and as I've been able to share more of my story, I definitely say that I was made in love, I was born in love, and I was raised in love because I'm the youngest of 8 siblings. Wow, and so that means that my dad met my mother, and that was his last love, even though he did eventually have another fiance after my mom. But I witnessed their love, right? Their journey together to becoming clean, starting a new life over. So my older siblings were raised under and witnessing my mom and dad's alcohol and drug abuse and that sort of abandonment, whereas here my mom and dad wanted to start a new journey. And so I was raised in that.
Wait, they had given, just to clarify, they had given birth to 7 siblings or all? Oh, wait.
So, you know, I like to say my daddy was a little player. Okay. So my dad has 4 other women.
Okay.
Where I have those siblings from, but we're all very close.
Okay. Cool.
And so because I'm 30, my mom and dad had me at their later age. So my mom had me at 32 and my dad had me at 42. Okay. The second oldest sibling above me is about 45 and the oldest is 60.
Wow.
So my dad had his first kid at 16 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. So today, he would be 72. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. But you are the only child of both your parents?
Yes.
Okay. All right, sorry, continue.
Yeah, so Serenity Joy Smith is my name, what they named me. But I guess the more deeper part to my story is that, you know, having parents that had alcoholic and drug abuse, that comes with trauma and PTSD, and that comes from a lot of having to get through some of their bad decisions and how it impacts them later in life. And so for my mother, because my older brother from my mom, he witnessed a lot of my mom's, you know, drug abuse and relationships where it was toxic. And And what I witnessed was my mother's love for me, but how drug and alcohol had impacted her to now having PTSD when she had me and also suffering from mental illness.
Yeah.
So when I was a baby, she was diagnosed with schizophrenia.
Okay.
Well, at the time, I think it just gradually grew to schizophrenia. So it was depression, PTSD. There was this story that my family shared with me years later in my college years that when I was a baby, she had tried to put me in the oven to cook. But it was my dad who got home in time to stop her. And that was her first hospitalization. And so my older sibling at the time really took care of me my first year as a baby. And hearing that story older, because a lot of my younger years, there was a lot of secrecy, you can say, that my siblings withheld from me. And I would say it grew some resentment and anger towards my family and how they would share certain stories with me, or the fact that it was laughable to them because that wasn't their mother. But my story is truly unique to be a child of two parents that had drug and alcohol abuse, and then a parent that ended up suffering with mental illness.
Now let's talk about it. You lose your dad. Now I don't think the audience know this because you talk in your conversation, you're like, my dad would have been, and you're talking about him in past tense. So you did lose your dad. At what age were you, did you end up losing him?
Yeah, so my dad passed away from colon cancer at the age of 13. Wow. So up until I was 13, my parents split when I want to say in the third grade.
Okay.
That has to be like 8, 9. And I remember vividly like coming home and like my mom's like, yeah, we're going down the street to another apartment. And I'm like, okay, but what's happened with daddy? He's moving. And so my dad always would just have custody or, visitation of me every other weekend. So I would go spend the weekends with him. And not knowing the reasons for their separation, it was because of my mom's episodes and things that I wasn't like really privy and exposed to. And I grew up with my dad always going on an adventure. Like every weekend I was with him, it was always going to like some amusement park. It was always going to a restaurant. Because I am the youngest of 8, I have a lot of nieces and nephews that are around my age. And so he would gather us up to take us out to the movies, Disney on Ice, the circus, the Soul Circus. Like it was just always something. And then going back home with my mom was just always so dark. And, I was never allowed to have friends over, not understanding why. Like, I just thought she was so mean. Like, why can't I not have friends over? But as I age and now I know it was because she was dealing with a mental illness that she was suffering with later on in life that impacted her, even though she was still on her journey to being clean.
Okay, so growing up, you actually didn't know that your mom had a mental health.
There was no title to it because I didn't witness any hospitalization. I just knew that my mom always went to NAAA meetings. So I grew up in meetings. So everyone's sharing a story about how, it impacted their children relationship, how, what they used to do back in the days and how thankful, because the NA and AA meetings focuses around God, right? Okay. God is the one that redirected me to this path. And so we're all in community together to stay committed to our paths. And so it's always just storytelling. So I just grew up in a lot of meetings. My mom will always just be journaling. It was always dim lighting in the house. It was just always so like depressive and dark. And I just would go to my room. My brother was in his room. And when it was time to have fun, it was always my dad's side. That was the fun, right? So my dad is he's one of 12. So I have 12 uncles and aunts. And so it was always like, even if I'm not with my dad, I'm going to my auntie's house and I'm hanging with my cousins who are around my age or my nieces and nephew. So it was always like adventure dad, mom, depressed.
Yeah. When did you really identify, what age did you identify that something here is a bit different? Like, in comparison to what, it was supposed to be?
I want to say since maybe middle school, high school, mostly high school, because I was in an 8-year relationship that was, my mother had no idea because she was just in her world. And I would always just, to get out the house, I would just say, I'm at my best friend's house up the block. When my boyfriend at the time, his family, they knew of my situation and they were my family. Oh, so, wow. And they were Hispanic, so they're Honduran. And so Hispanic Latino families are very family cultured. Yeah. And so it was, his mother was just always, she never brought up my mother, but I knew she knew of the situation due to my boyfriend at the time telling her. And it was just always going to cousins' parties, barbecues. It was just always with them. But to my mom, I was always with my friend, my best friend.
Friends couldn't come over, but you could go to other people's houses.
Yes. Even though I always had to give a lie, even if like there's a party happening, I would have to say like, oh, I'm going to this one set friend that my mom felt like we were best friends since 3rd grade. Okay. So she felt comfortable. Yes. There was a level of comfortability. Okay, yes. I know where she's at. So my life was very much secretive.
And what exactly would you say you relayed to your boyfriend or your friends or the people that knew of your family situation? You didn't really have a word to it. Yes, you knew she was going through like different things and, it was dark and depressive, but like, what would you title it as? Like, what would you say to your friends was happening at home?
I can't remember vividly, but I think I would just describe like, they would just say like, why is your mom never allow people over? And I would just always make up lies. Like, I really don't know. Like, she's just really overprotective. She just doesn't want anybody over. But as I shared like intimately with my boyfriend and my best friend, it was just more so like telling them things that I will observe and see. But it wasn't that deep of a conversation because there wasn't also language that they can help me to
identify what.
Yeah, it was just more so listening, like, but girl, you always welcome here. Or like my boyfriend just always remind me like, just come over, right? So it was just always.
So you found respite and solace in those relationships. Yes. And those things. So now you leave to go to college, right? Now it's like a bit of freedom, new environment. Now, are you able to name this or do you start to name it when you like during your college journey?
No, that's exactly when I witnessed what I didn't know was happening. So it was freshman year, my first year of university. And I remember just getting a call from my older brother that lived in the house with me and my mom. And he was like, Serenity, mommy is talking to herself. She's trying to put aluminum foil over the house lights. She's trying to go outside naked. Like, I don't know what's going on. And I just was like, what? Like, this sounds so scary. And I was just like, Aaron, like, I don't know, call the police. Like, he was like, okay, I'm going to go. And then the next thing I learned, and that was my mom's first hospitalization. And I just remember being so distraught and so like confused. And I just couldn't make sense of it, that I really felt even more alone. Because who do I go to around me and my peers in university to say, like, my mother just, like, it was not something I was comfortable sharing and talking about. And so what I decided to do was walk myself to the health wellness center.
Which is smart.
Yes. Yeah. And I just was like, I was just so hurt, so lost, so alone. And I just wanted to talk to somebody. And so I just remember filling out the paper, like, okay, I want to talk to somebody. But I wasn't ready to talk one-on-one with someone. So I just joined a group therapy session.
Okay, cool.
And I just didn't really do the talking. I would just listen because I just needed to be in a space where maybe I can feed off of others, people's energies. And yeah, that was my first experience.
Being able to name that my mom could potentially have a mental health challenge.
I knew it was mental health. I didn't understand mental health either myself. It was just like, what is this? I know it's not normal. And I just was shocked. But I always remember saying to myself that my mother did her very best to make sure she stayed on medication and to go to therapy. But it was not until I left for college that it's been downhill ever since, where she hasn't been taking medication.
And why do you think that is? Do you feel like because you were no longer there, she wasn't being held accountable to actually like do the things that were necessary for her to take care of herself?
So what I feel and believe was that my mom was suffering and she was doing the best she could to just get through the last child, so that she can be free. But I also know what really impacted and triggered was I want to say during my university years, she had a boyfriend that my brother mentioned, and he was a white man.
Oh, wow.
And my mom was really enthused about this relationship. I've never seen my mom have a relationship outside of my father. So this is years later. Okay, she has a man, but I'm overprotective. And when she had her episode, everything was about him. She would just constantly mention his name, his name, his name. He did this, he did that, he did that. And I just thought she's so obsessive over something must have happened, traumatizing, because we know in mental illness, anything that triggers these episodes or for someone to have their break, something traumatic must have happened.
Yeah.
And it's been him. Everything that happens, the reason why I moved abroad is because of this man.
Oh, wow.
So it's me and my brother, my brother has witnessed a bit more than I because I was away at college.
Right.
And he was home doing university in the state of New York. So he was living home. So he's witnessed not only drug abuse, but now mental illness. And then here I am being raised in a household where I don't know what's going on. It's kind of weird, but I had a life outside of the house and I leave for college. And then I'm getting a call that things are happening that's weird, but I still don't get to witness it. Right. I just get to hear it. So it just always felt like the unknown around me for a while. And so, I joined therapy at school, and that was really the start of my relationship with therapy, which I've been in therapy for the past 10 years. The past 2 years I've taken off, and now I'm back again.
Okay, awesome. Now, I want you kind of just to walk us briefly through what going through college and getting to your adult career looked like for you, knowing that this is happening at home, things are changing, your mom is now, severely getting worse than what you remember. How does that then impact you in terms of your relationships, the people you're surrounding yourself with, the way that you look at yourself, the way that you're, just even thinking about life in general? And then what was really holding you together, knowing that all of this was happening, and yet, to your point, you rarely had places you could go to other than maybe group therapy or the health and wellness center?
Yeah. I always had a social group. I always had friends, but what I didn't know, and I'm thankful for the friends that I still am with today, what I didn't know how it was showing up is that anytime I would get a phone call from my mom, my friends always say my energy and attitude, everything just switched. And I never could see that. They'll just say that I became rude or mean, or just I was shut down. I was just not engaged. And so that impacted how I did relationships. And it wasn't until after college my friends shared these things with me.
Yeah.
I became heavily involved in academics and doing things because I really felt as I was getting older, no one really could help me the way that I thought people could be there for me. So I had all these siblings, but they have their own kids. I'm same age as their kids, but no one could always be sending me money for books or for life. I felt like a lot of my family had more commentary about my mom than they did to support me or wonder how would I feel about you saying these things about my mother. And so it became very, let me invest in me, put my head in the books. So I joined the student government. I was on the, student government board. I did RA. I decided at one point, I wanted to intern for Obama. I just started doing so many. And I did it.
Come on now.
And I just put my focus there. I really, at some point, I really just felt like I was my own survival. And it went as far as I just felt so I need more of an escape, that in my senior year, I applied to study abroad because I was done. I was so like academically driven that I was done with electives and classes. And it was just like my advisor was just like, I mean, you just have these credits you can do. And I never left the country. And my dad's brother always promised me at the age of 16, you could get a car, you could get some cash. And literally, you know, the water the dispensers, the water dispenser bottles.
Yes.
He had coins just full of that, and he gave it to me. I cashed it out at the bank, and it was like $5,000.
Oh wow!
And
thank you, Uncle.
Yes, I was like, thank you, kept your word. And I went to the study abroad office, like, hey, I want to apply, and it was like the deadline passed already, and I was like, no. Then 2 weeks later, someone dropped out, and they said, you can apply. So I was really excited, and they said you just need to write a essay. And we need your passport. I was like, oh, I don't got a passport. And it was like, well, we need this application in a week. So I took that money and I expedited. I did all of that. Things you can't do today. Get a passport that quick. And I got a passport. And next thing you know, a few months later, I was off to the UK.
Wow.
And that was my first time ever out of the USA. And so that really sparked and opened a whole nother world, which is funny because as international, as much as I traveled, sometimes my family likes to say that's been my escape away from them.
Yeah.
And it could be truth to that. I haven't dissected that part in therapy until recently when my therapist was like, I mean, I think that could be true, don't you think?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think it could be too.
You think you really use traveling as a way to be able to cope with what was going on at home.
For sure. And I didn't know that until I left the country to see what it was given. And I was like, ooh. And it was beautiful. And I just felt like if I can just do this as an adult, if I can get a job one day when I graduate and have a career, I would love to do this. And so I didn't even know I was like manifesting what I'm now currently doing in that moment in time.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's extraordinary to even just hear that one experience ignited something new in you, and you now are like, okay, I want more. I want to experience more. But yeah, how did you then like transition to fully now being out of school, being on your own, getting ready to like take on the world, and then also knowing fully well that things were still not well at home with your mom? And how did you deal with that guilt of still pursuing your career and your plans and your passion, and then and still continuing knowing fully well that like, you know, your mom was also going through it?
Yeah. I mean, in the midst of all of this excitement I'm sharing and like how I got to travel, it was not easy not having my father around, having a mother that I couldn't vent to about friendships, relationships, or life. Having siblings that always wanted to joke about the circumstance of my mother because they may have gone through their issues with my mom when I was a baby that I'm not understanding of. And navigating college and just being this overachiever, as you can say, the person that I felt like was my parent was God, was Jesus. And that was because journaling became like my way of life. And I will always just journal to God. And so while I didn't have that church deep relationship in the way that I have today, journaling and crying and talking to God, that was my way. And I really just felt like God, from all the opportunities of being able to go abroad in the way that I had a 2-week deadline, to getting the internship with Obama, to, you know, graduating as a first generational cycle breaker, I'm thinking like God has been with me and has favored me. Yeah. And I am the youngest of 8. And it's not like all of my 8 siblings are, you know, no shade to y'all, love y'all, are successful in that way. But like I was that, you would think a child who's come from a household this way wouldn't make it. And that's what some of my family members thought, you know, so because like they had to step in.
Wrote you off. That like, like, she's not going to go too far. Like,
for sure, because they had to step in. And some of my aunts and uncles were middle class computer technicians, and I had to go live with them. And it wasn't, you know, like who's investing in me the way that a mother, father would invest in their child. And it was really like God, I didn't see, looking back now today, I'm just like, God has been
Your constant anchor, your constant.
Yes, like
provider,
how
your
much he
constant-
loves me, like the amount of love that I feel, that how God loves me, even in the trials and tribulations, even having to be the young child in a boardroom full of doctors, social workers, psychologists, and fight for my mother, because my older brother didn't have the language, and was like fed up from dealing with it because he was at home while I was away from college. So he would call me and be like, you deal with this. So I would take the Greyhound 8 hours from Buffalo down to New York, see my mother, to be denied by my mother.
Of even getting to see her. Yeah.
And I would still show up. And all who I had in those moments was God.
Yeah.
And how did I purchase these tickets? It wasn't family members giving me money. It was through my RA stipend, my student government stipend, my refund checks. But everything about how I managed and navigated everything was through God.
Yeah.
And my motivation to feel like I only have me to depend on.
Yeah. So in hindsight now, I mean, you are an amazing professional at GIS. That's even a testimony. Unfortunately, because of time, we probably won't get to just talk or let the audience know, how you got to be in Ghana from the Netherlands. But God is just taking you through such a long and fruitful journey. And you've grown, you've matured, you've used him as your anchor. You've journaled to him. You've been in this long relationship with him. But what do you really feel like God has been trying to teach you, like through all of this? And currently, what is the relationship with your mom? And how are you able to cope with this relationship, knowing fully well that like it's a difficult situation, but this is what you're kind of dealing with right now?
Yeah. So yeah, I really have to say that I believe I am the story that was written for my mother and father of their newness and their new beginning when they had me. And I like to say I am the I'm the cycle breaker.
Yeah.
I'm the youngest of 8. I've made it this far. And my siblings and family are all proud of me. Like, when you can say my baby sister, my niece, my brother's daughter did X, Y, Z and is still doing and is traveling the world, and my nieces and nephew can look up to that. I've realized that I've just been the cycle breaker and the beautiful beginning and blessing of my mother and father when they started their sobriety journey. And I think because of that, God favored me, especially because he knew what their commitment of giving up a life, they were creating a new blessing. And I felt God knew that I was born into this family. Therefore, I'm going to take care of you. And so how I've always been, not because anyone's told me, but I love my mother dearly. Every time I look at my mother, I'm just like, she's so beautiful. Like I wish that she got a chance to live the life that she deserves because she's so beautiful. And I just felt like I've always just honored thy mother and thy father. I honor them. And so while it's been difficult to deal with a parent with schizophrenia and who has episodes and who want to curse everybody out on the street and who don't, want to take medication, I had to do my own work. And that was go to NAMI and take some classes to understand mental illness. That was putting myself in therapy. So how do I manage and set boundaries with my mom? Because it was burning me out. It was a lot to deal with. And it became little things like, what's your capacity when you're on the phone with mom? Okay, 15 minutes, then that's all you give, and not feel bad about that. If it means putting her on speaker and let her talk her stuff and I do my things, that's what I do. And if it means making sure I'm showing up to every appointment every time she's hospitalized to make sure that they know she has somebody and I'm not playing, it's me. And and I haven't always felt like the best daughter because you want to fix or heal your mother. But I eventually, over the years, through God and my relationship of just having him only, because a lot of times I couldn't share these things with people. People knew, but I couldn't share in depth. Like, imagine your own friend peer to peer don't have the capacity to take all that you're sharing. Like, I would have friends say, this is a lot, Serenity. And you're right, it is. And the only person that I can go to and cry and worship to is God.
Yeah.
And my therapist for giving me strategies. And it also helped me to like just love my mother for who she is, even when it became embarrassing, even when it becomes hard, because who else, right? Who else is going to support and help my mother? And I believe not only because I've helped my mother, that's why I'm blessed, but because that's who God made me to be, Serenity Joy Smith. He made me to be that daughter and that friend, that sister and sibling. And I just feel like my life had favor and grace on it from the beginning. Not because I asked for it, because of just my parents' story.
100%. I mean, your story is so unique and so beautiful, and it's like it can't even compensate the minutes that we have allocated towards the podcast. But I really want to ask you this: like, if you had an opportunity to look at the young Serenity in second year of college or third year, and getting ready to kind of get into the world, what would you tell her to encourage her that would make her, see things from a different perspective, knowing what you know now?
As cliche as it sounds, that God loves you, God has you, and that we always say that God knew our lives and he written our lives out for us. And so because he knew this, who your parents were going to be, that's what your story is going to be. Trust and know that God has you, right? Because he is your parent and he gave you your mother. He gave you this story. And I would tell her to continue meeting God halfway. So do the things that you need to do to invest in you. Continue doing the things to pour into you. Continue living life and not feeling bad for the decisions in the life that you want, because it took a long time. It took my family, actually. This was a breakthrough for us. When I was thinking about wanting to have a career abroad and moving abroad, I was so conflicted because I thought I was abandoning my mother.
Yeah.
And it was my siblings for the first time saying, you deserve to live the life you want. You deserve it. God has you. And I went into fasting and praying, and I said, God, I will only go if you tell me that she's going to be okay. And literally a whisper came over me, and it still is to this day, that I got your mother, Serenity. I know your mother. I designed your mother.
Designed her, yeah.
You do what visions and inspiration that has been planted on your heart, because I gave you that. And so you go and do that. And so if I can just look back at Serenity, was to, not be so worried, not be so fearful, but to do, because everything that you desire, you feel, you're loving, was given by God. So therefore, there's provision made, there's a plan made, and
there's a purpose.
Yeah.
And there's a purpose. I mean, because every step of the way, even in the way that we met, there was a purpose of you being there to be able to encourage young Ghanaian students. You have a completely different background. You have an accent. You're from the States, but yet God has even brought you across a different nation.
Yeah.
I mean, do you understand how deep that is to be able
that
to
is
speak
deep
to people and encourage them, and young people at that really in a normal day don't really get an opportunity to be vulnerable and be open. Serenity, your story is truly a gift to the world. I want you to know that as long as you're alive, as long as you have a voice, your voice will travel around nations to continue to inspire people. This
Amen.
is just only the beginning.
Thank you.
I am inspired by your story, but I know that other people that come in contact with this episode are even going to be more inspired, because it truly is evidence of God's goodness. Despite the challenges, despite the ups and downs, despite the tribulations, you are still standing, and you're not just surviving, you're thriving. And your mom, we continue to uplift her in prayer, but she's alive, and God is keeping her, and
kept his promise.
And he's kept his promise, and you guys are still in communication. And, it's truly inspiring, but more importantly, it's just it's a joy to be able to see how God has been able to still work in you and through you to be able to be a blessing to everyone you come in contact with.
Yeah. And can I just add this, that I comfortably share this story, but the first time that I've ever publicly shared this story was through your collaboration with Georgetown University. And so when I shared it, people thought like, wow, how often, I'm surprised you didn't cry. How often do you talk about that? I was like, oh, this is my first time. But that's when I knew God has ordained for such a time as that.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't imagine, I didn't think I was a mental health advocate. I just knew I was a daughter to a parent. And now here I am talking to students in Ghana and on podcasts, sharing my real life stuff that can be used against me later on. But I own it. I'm proud of it. Yeah. It's my story. It's who I am. And even more so, travel has just really shown me purpose in my life.
Yeah.
For sure. 30 countries. I'm like, God.
Only God and God alone. Wow, Serenity. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, girl. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
If people want to keep in contact with you and, follow your travel adventures, is there any way that people can connect?
Yes. Don't be weird, but my page is private on IG. It's Seeking Serenity Abroad _
Seeking Serenity Abroad.
Yes. I will love to invite you to my community. Yeah, that's me. I have a YouTube channel. I haven't updated in a while, but I have some travels on there.
Awesome. Do you vlog a little bit?
Just a little bit.
Okay. Maybe we'll have more to come.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vanessa.
You took out time out of your vacation in Lagos to come chill with me
at
the Season Woman Pod. And, God will honor you and honor your obedience to share your story.
Thank you.
God bless you, sis.
Bye.